We Talk Wool with the boys, or the team, from PGG Wrights, and Grant Edwards, GM of Wool, about to join us. Back in the bad old days, Grant, in the 1950s, the Korean War sparked a wool boom. That's not really happening around the Russian-Ukraine war, but that's not the biggest problem facing the market, is it? China's the issue. Good afternoon.
Hi, Jamie. No, you're correct there. We're seeing the war itself impacts, or it has the potential to impact a little bit on the power that comes out of Russia that supports, through the Germanys and Lithuania. A lot of the processing through those sort of Scandinavian countries goes through Lithuania. So there's a potential impact there, though a lot of those companies are self-protected with the likes of windmills, etc. And as you rightly say, the China, when we see a lockdown of a Shanghai, Shanghai, to my understanding, is the major port in the world. And to stop the ability to shift goods or wool in particular, as we're talking about today, through those Chinese countries, has a significant effect. And to your points, a lot of our wool does go to China. It's a lot of our BC types, as we call them, the more wools with a bit more yellow in colour in them and a bit more VM for processing in China. And it certainly affects that market. When you get a country that can shut down one of the major ports in the world overnight, basically.
Yeah, and goodness knows we've got a bit of discoloration in some of the fleeces this year because of the wet spring and early summer. I want to talk about shearing rates. Now, we've had an increase to the tune of the CPI, 6.9%. If you're doing merinos and half-breds, up 12.4%, a 20% increase for juniors. On the face of it, it seems quite a high or a hefty charge for farmers to face. But speaking to many farmers, and we heard Stu Lowe and Jeremy Rooks talking about it before you, Grant, no one begrudges the shearers their money because they work for every cent they get, and we've got to maintain a workforce for the shearing industry, but it's just making the harvesting of wool less and less economic.
Certainly, Jamie. I did actually speak to Phil Holden yesterday. He's the executive officer from the Shearers Association, and the rates that they're indicating are recommended. They recommend a minimum rate for the various roles. So the increases suggested are an increase on those minimum rates. And as I understand it, some contractors are already paying over those rates. So it varies by contractor, region, and as you've indicated, sheep type. So, but as you say, the key messages are, it's the cost of living increases to those, and farmer clients need to discuss with their contractor what this might mean for them. But it is about staff retention in a tight labour market, and I think. And we're seeing it now. We're seeing it across a lot of industries, and it's a real challenge in that shearing industry. As you say, it's bloody hard yakka. I understand. I'm talking to you previously. You've held a handpiece the odd time, and it's hard going. It's a specialist skill, and it's something that we've got to invest in and the training, and we've got to pay accordingly.
Well, Grant, it may not be the oldest profession in the world. I think we know what that one is. But it's the most honest profession in the world, shearing on the end of a handpiece, because you literally only get paid for what you put down the porthole. I say all power to the shearers. Now, hey, just one to finish on, and I know that there's a really interesting article by Alan Jones, the North Island wool manager for PGG Wrights, and on warning about attempting to alter genetics. And he's talking here about moving your flock towards self-shedding. At the moment, let's face it, it would be very tempting. But if and when wool recovers, it takes a long time to turn it around.
Yeah, it certainly does, Jamie. We put out what we call the Wall Street Journal. We put it out once a month, and we put it out digitally to our clients, and people can go on Facebook, etc., and through the PGW Wool portal and read that. And we're just about to put out this article now that you're talking about. Certainly, my understanding for the likes of shedding sheep, to go from a base Romney flock that you've bred, some farmers, let's face it, they've been around, some of these farming families are well over 100 years, Jamie, and they've bred sheep that suit their property, suit what they do, give them the best financial returns across a sheep that's not just a wool sheep, it's a meat breed, etc. And to go into changes, you've got to be careful that they're not knee-jerk. It takes sort of 5 to 8 years, as I understand it, to make those changes, and they can be pretty significant, and you don't get back out of them in a hurry. And to go into them, you've got to understand what that means for your constitution of your animal and facial eczema. There's a whole lot of factors, and we're just trying to be pragmatic here, but to advise that, make sure you do your due diligence and homework on it, because, certainly as a wool business, we don't want to see it. We believe the future's still bright, even though where we are at the moment.